The Girl Between Two Worlds by Scarlett Eva Williams. Dedication. This book is dedicated to my daughter. May this story remind you that life is a journey through many worlds. No matter how difficult the path becomes, love and faith can guide us forward. Contents. Chapter 1, A Girl Between Worlds. Chapter 2, The Father Who Chose Me. Chapter 3, Under the Sound of Bells. Chapter 4, Monastery Walls. Chapter 5, The First Punishment. Chapter 6, A Girl Without a Place. Chapter 7, Suzdal. Chapter 8, A Strange Child. Chapter 9, Temptation. Chapter 10, My First Year at School. About the author. Scarlett Eva Williams is a writer whose work explores childhood, faith, identity, and the experience of growing up between cultures. Born in Russia and shaped by different cultural and spiritual traditions, she writes memoir-style stories about family, resilience, and the search for love and meaning. The Girl Between Two Worlds tells the story of a spirited girl raised between cultures, religions, and two very different worlds: freedom and monastery life. The Girl Between Two Worlds by Scarlett Eva Williams. Chapter 1, A Girl Between Worlds. Some children are born into families, and some are born between worlds. I was born in Russia, but Italian blood runs through my veins. Sometimes I feel that this is why there has always been too much life in me, too many feelings and too much fire. My mother used to say that from the very beginning I was a loud child. I laughed louder than others, ran faster than others, and cried as if the whole world had to hear my pain. But there was one person in my childhood who never tried to change me: my father. He was not my biological father, he was Iranian. When my mother was pregnant with me, my biological father disappeared from her life. He simply left. Sometimes I think that at that moment fate decided to write my story differently. My stepfather registered me as his daughter. His name stands on my birth certificate. He did it for the sake of God. He was a deeply religious Muslim and believed that a child should never answer for the mistakes of adults. Until I was 6 years old, I lived in a world where love was simple and natural. My father often traveled, but whenever he returned, our home filled with noise, laughter, and running feet. We played so loudly that sometimes the neighbors knocked on the radiators. We ran through the apartment, through the courtyard, up and down the staircases. I squealed with joy, and he laughed together with me. He never told me, "Be quiet, sit still, stop running." Instead, he would say, "Run faster." Every time he came home, it felt like a celebration. He always brought me gifts from Iran, but they were never just gifts. He asked me beforehand, "What do you want?" And then my childish imagination began to work. Sometimes I invented such strange things that finding them seemed almost impossible. But somehow, he always did. He searched for them in markets and shops and tiny little stores. And then he brought them to me. When he handed me a gift, he always watched my face carefully. It was important for him to see my joy. Then he would ask again, "Where have you been? What did you do?" And I told him everything. I could barely pronounce words and often spoke in my childish language, but he listened to me as if I were telling the most important stories in the world. Sometimes I think that this was the first time I truly felt what it meant to be loved. But childhood is a strange thing. When you live in happiness, you believe it will last forever. I believed that too. I did not know that one day everything would change. I did not know that monastery walls were waiting for me ahead. I did not know that 11 years of silence were waiting for me, and that the noisy little girl who ran through the house laughing would one day find herself in a place where she would have to speak in whispers. Chapter 2, The Father Who Chose Me. Sometimes fate gives us parents by blood, and sometimes by choice. My father chose me. When I was little, I did not understand what that meant. To me, he was simply my father, and tall, strong, with warm eyes and a calm voice. Only much later did I realize how rare that choice was. He came to Russia to study. There, he met my mother. When they met, she was already carrying me under her heart. Another man, my biological father, did not want to take responsibility. But this man, an Iranian, a stranger to our country and our culture, did something that not every biological father is capable of doing. He said, The child is not guilty, and he registered me as his daughter. His name stands on my birth certificate. When I grew older, my mother told me that he did it quietly without grand words. He simply went and signed the documents. For him, it was natural. He believed that before God, every person answers for their own actions, and leaving a child without a father is a great sin. He was a Muslim, a deeply religious man, but in our home there were no strict rules or harsh prohibitions. There were only two things: love and respect. I was his little shadow. He almost always took me with him wherever he went, to the store, to the small tobacco kiosk on the corner, to visit his friends, Iranians who were also living and studying in Russia, even when I was very small. I would sit in his arms or hold his hand while he spoke with his friends in a language I did not understand. They laughed, drank tea, and talked loudly and quickly. Sometimes they patted my head and smiled. I felt like I belonged to their world. He never said, "Stay at home." He said, "Come with me." Sometimes I think that this was when I first felt what it meant to be needed. But childhood is a strange thing. When you live in happiness, you believe it will last forever. I believe that too. I did not know that one day everything would change. I did not know that monastery walls were waiting for me ahead. I did not know that 11 years of silence were waiting for me, and that the noisy little girl who ran through the house laughing would one day find herself in a place where she would have to speak in whispers.